Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in for our latest Ranger Chat. My name is Roy Wood, and I'm the Chief of Interpretation at Katmai National Park and Preserve. And what we are trying to do here today is to rehash some of the events that many of us witnessed over the end of last week when we had 451 and her family have that incident in front of the camera where the one cub was stumbling and sick and eventually died on camera. And in order to shed some new light on this, what we wanted to do today was to bring in the folks that actually went out to retrieve the cub's body at the end of the week. And I'll let them introduce themselves, starting at the very front here.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm the bear monitorer here at Katmai, and I've been in web chat before doing the describing the bear monitoring program.
And I'm Bob Peterson, biotech here at Katmai. First web chat.
First web chat, great. Glad to have you here.
I'm Michael Saxton. I'm also one of the biotechs here at Katmai. My first web chat as well.
Well, we hope to get more of you guys on here, but hopefully in the future it won't be for these more upsetting kinds of events. And for wildlife biologists, this sort of thing in the mill. For a lot of the bear camp people, this is the first time they've had to actually watch one of the bears perish. And so I know emotions last week as this was happening, and we will try to get to some of that, but what I wanted to do is jump right in. We have a ton of questions. You guys must have submitted 150 or 160 questions the last time I looked. Now, luckily for us, many of them are similar, so we've grouped them together, but even we have 47-ish questions. Into these things, you know that we get through about 20, Mike and I. But Mike and I tend to be very long-winded about things, and we know that Bob is a man of few words. So if we throw all the questions to Bob, it should go lickety-split, and then we can get to all your fresh questions. We do have some specifically for you, so be prepared for that. But we'll try to get through as many of these as possible. We might keep some of the answers shorter than normal because we'll want to make sure we get to as many of them as possible. And if we manage to get through these, then we'll try to solicit some questions from those of you that are viewing, because we would like to give you the opportunity, to ask questions if we make you think of something that you hadn't. I'll go ahead and I'll start with the first sort of group of questions and how it transpired. The first that I heard of it, maybe about 4:30 on Wednesday. When did it actually start? Do you guys know? The bear camp people probably know. But
yeah, everything I know is reported to you guys, and
Based off.
yeah, you all know far better than we do what time this exactly started.
I was at a training, so I wasn't around here, and we were all trying to communicate while getting work done at this training, and with Gene and with you, and I don't know if you guys were involved at that point. But the thing that a lot of asking us questions at that point, and we didn't have fun, and kept telling people was that this is the first time we've seen this, and I think there was a little about that because. I think what you were meaning, or anybody else who was chatting with them, was that this is the first time we have seen this. Not human beings have seen behavior like this. Isn't that right?
I can't speak for what was said by everyone else. Certainly, lots of have been seen in the past. Cubs, as a result of, it appears possibly something else not as well documented. So it's certainly having it is new.
I know some of the issues, and we'll talk more about the sows. I guess that's what people were getting at was do we ever sow? Told me we're streaming issues, so we may get if they can figure out what our stream. And I did have a little orange light here telling me that there were some streaming issues too, but they chimed in and said there were some issues.
Okay.
Commercial break.
Yep.
I think we may be back up and going again. My light is not flashing amber at me anymore, so I think maybe we're okay to go ahead and proceed again. But I know when people were asking like what's going on, what's going to happen next is, we just didn't know. This is the first time that any of us had witnessed this with the bears out at Brooks Camp, and it's certainly the first time these bear cams have shown it. And so I think that's what led people to think that this was an unprecedented, never before seen did a mother stay with a sick cub like that. And I think all of our conversations, what we talked about was that in situations like this elsewhere, we have seen the full spectrum of sow behavior. We have seen, well,
yeah, it's earlier today we were talking about an incident at Lake Clark in the past couple of years where a cub died in front of a bear viewing area, and shortly after the bear passed away, the sow actually started to consume the cub. So you can see anything from that all the way up to, I've seen out here at Brooks a sow return to an area for 3 days after a cub was killed by a boar. And she just continued to return to the area despite the fact the cub was no longer there. There is a very broad spectrum of behavior. Just like with people, you're going to see a similar spectrum in bears.
yeah, and even just with the cubs that or the family groups that we see at Brooks Camp, we see that full range of how doting the mothers are too. Like, I'm not going to make you say who the best mother is or anything, but we have some that are extremely doting and take extra time. And the one that always comes to mind for me that's kind of the opposite end has been 410 when she's had cubs, where I think she's just oblivious that she even has cubs for half of the time. We love her, she's great, but it's a full spectrum of how much time they spend with him. And so I guess that full range there is an important thing to keep in mind. They are individuals and they act as individuals, and so this is not necessarily the same way it's going to unfold the next time this thing happens, or the next time it happens in some other location. I'll try to go down the list here and make sure I get out as many of the questions, and we're already probably way behind. But during this time that this was going on, we have a question about, did the cams actually help? Did they help us understand this situation? Did they help you guys prepare for going out there to try to rescue the cub's remains?
I would say it was definitely very helpful. I don't think we would have been as properly alerted to this situation if there weren't cameras up there. We had a maintenance crew that was just finishing up their job of closing down camp. And so when they would have discovered that, we wouldn't have had the same preparation. Also, just to be able to monitor its condition, the condition of the cub as it degraded through time, we wouldn't have been able to do that without the cams.
It provides good information as well regarding, these videos that we have of the cub stumbling around and stuff. That's phenomenal information to have for the lab that's running the necropsy, for them to be able to look at behavior ahead of time. It allowed us to know fairly precisely when the cub died. That's important information as well. So I would say they're helpful.
It felt to me, sitting in Anchorage, completely detached from this, that having the access of the cameras really did help, because I know that every 15 minutes we were counting respirations, and we had people the world over counting respirations for us. Nobody was going to miss a breath that animal had, and so like you said, we were pretty precise at getting the time of death as a result. One of the questions we had was, have we reviewed the videos? And we have not reviewed all of them yet, because unlike you guys, and you've heard Mike and I say this many times, unlike most of you, we have terrible internet here. So it's very, very difficult for us to even view the video files that you guys have posted links to. And so what we're going to do is we're in the process of copying the files off of the server here in King Salmon, where all of the webcam footage is stored, and then we'll have a chance to review those in detail without running up tremendous internet fees, because it is really, really bad internet out here. The best internet in town is the stuff that Explore.org has, and we don't have access to that except for work-related, like running the cams. I'll go back to the respirations. What are the normal respirations of a cub? Do you guys know that?
I honestly can't say. I can give adult, but not cubs.
What is
a little
adult
different. Adults would be about 40 per minute.
Okay.
Yeah, but for cubs, I've never paid that close of attention to how they would differ.
Okay. I know it was interesting watching the family group there, where you could see, you know, the cub having respirations, the mother having respirations, and then the dying cub having a different rate. It was interesting to see that, but I didn't know what the normal was for them. I think somebody looked it up, that it was like 16 to 30.
Yeah,
or
so
40 or something
I think 40 is a little bit high actually. Now that I'm thinking back, but 30 sounds
What are you doing to those
closer.
those bears that you're stressing them out?
Having fun.
After we review the videos, we might be able to clear up some of the confusion about the onset of symptoms, because there was some discussion about that, which cub was it, and we'll hopefully we can get that from the recorded video. The question that was on everybody's mind while it was going on was why didn't we go in and save the cub? And for the long-time viewers, they know our policy about not running in and immediately trying to rescue an animal that's injured or sick. But a lot of the people found out about this from Facebook and other social media outlets, that we had this cub that was dying, and they tuned in and weren't really prepared for that. Any of you want to talk about the...
Sounds like a Bob question.
It's a really touchy situation, because in the whole population of the Park Service, not everybody would agree with the decisions that are made, whether you should go in and try to rescue an animal or not. But the general policy is that national parks are not places to raise more of something. There aren't tree farms that you try to put out all the fires in, and they're not bear farms where you try to raise as many bears as possible. What we're trying to do is protect these wild spaces, and in wildness comes life and death, and being able to witness that and learn from it is the important thing. Now, I must admit, watching a cub die on camera was a really hard thing for I think most of us, we would like to either get in there and try to save it, or we would want to get in there and see what was making it sick, because of something to be learned. And you were starting to chime in with...
Oh, I mean, part of our designation is also to preserve natural processes, and I mean, death is a natural part of life, and it's part of the process. So that is a part of what the national parks are trying to preserve.
And that's something we could probably do a 3-hour chat on, just discussing the pros and cons of that. But I think one thing maybe to also keep in mind is that even if we had wanted to go in, even if our policy had allowed us to go in and retrieve a sick cub, that doesn't mean you guys would have been able to do it. Because going up, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, how does going up and taking a live cub away from mother differ from going up and taking a dead cub from her?
It sounds like something that I would not do.
So, it was a difficult situation for many of you to watch, and a lot of good discussions were had by the staff here about what to do next. And we'll find out if we what the cause of the death was, perhaps, and maybe that'll shed some light on if it was the right decision or not. The sort of follow-on question to that is that if we are trying to protect this natural process, part of that natural process is decay and having ravens and magpies come in and take over. Why did we go ahead and remove her? What's the benefit of...
Every time a situation like this arises, there's always a discussion had about the benefits, the scientific benefits of removing the carcass, scientific benefits, as well as if there is some sort of an unnatural element going on here, the benefit of us learning about that, as opposed to that negative side of interfering and sort of changing that process. And in this situation, it was determined that the benefits, the scientific benefits of knowing what the cause of death was, outweighed that negative side of interference, largely because it's extraordinarily rare to document death in cubs for anything other than infanticide or starvation. So to potentially have an opportunity to see something different, this is a phenomenal chance to see what other causes of death there are.
And when we were discussing earlier, we said we were not going to speculate on the cause of death because we have people looking into that right now. But the one perhaps speculative question regarding the death that I would pose right now would be, if we find out it's a disease, what's our next step? You know, what do we do with that information if we find out it was, you know, a naturally occurring disease?
If it's a naturally occurring disease, one of the biggest questions is going to be, is it transmissible to humans? If it is transmissible to humans, then by golly, that becomes a question for you and the rest of the leadership team. Most likely it's going to be something that's not a huge threat to people, to visitors, to employees that are out here. In which case, it's, you know, disease is a natural process. It can be difficult to watch, but most likely, if it's a natural part of the ecosystem and of the cycle, we're going to allow it to continue. There are, of course, there's always the possibility that it's a disease that's been brought in unnaturally. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but if that does turn out to be the case, then perhaps that would also weigh into the decision on whether or not we would jump in and do something there.
I know Troy, the chief of resources for the park, we've talked about diseases before, and you know, if we're true to our mission, we would protect naturally occurring diseases as well in the park. They're part of that process, and that's another topic there too.
That's,
like
they are living beings as well. They are living beings as well.
Yep. A question that was repeated several times was some variation on, were you surprised by this? And I'll go ahead and say something first because I knew I was going to ask that one next and you guys didn't. I would say that I wasn't really surprised by anything because I know there's this full range. I was fascinated by it. It struck me that how her maternal instincts were kicking into. We talk about that being such a strong force of nature, that bond between a mother and cubs, and then to see it play out like that, I thought that was incredibly fascinating. And I know the next time it may not play out like that at all, but I did find that to be particularly interesting, how much time she spent there. Was any aspect of this surprising to any of you?
I had a very similar reaction where we're accustomed to seeing the processes of nature, so it's something where we know we're probably going to have to deal with dying of a cub, but you're right, it was fascinating to see not only just the mother's reaction, but also just that we could see the progression of the cub from when it was stumbling around and not appearing to be right to its final moments, really.
Anything from you?
I was most surprised by just the fact that we were able to approach the cub as we did with her very close.
Yeah.
I think I mostly agree with previous statements where I wouldn't say it was surprising so much as it was fascinating to get to watch it play out in that way. I'm not aware of any other case that's been documented this well. From the get-go, from seeing that initial behavior, that initial stumbling, all the way through a multiple day process in which the sow remains in the area. None of the behaviors from the sow or the cub, I would say, were surprising, but they were very interesting to get to see and to get that much of an inside look at. The one thing that I least expected, I suppose, was not actually anything to do with the sow or the cub. It was something that I have not had a chance to see because we don't have those videos downloaded yet. But from what I hear, everybody else saw. Is that after it died, other bears walked by that night. And my suspicion, if I would have been that another bear would have gone for it and tried to eat it. But the fact that they continued past, there's some very interesting behaviors there.
Yeah, I was watching some of that in the dark, so I'm looking forward to getting the quality views of it and take a look at it myself. Let's see. There's some questions I can quickly answer, like how many viewers were on. I don't really know. We used to have a counter. We'd have to look at the Google Analytics later. So at some point I might be able to share that with you. How common is this? I think we've already said that this is, cubs die all the time. What's the survival rate's like 25 or 30%?
33%.
Yeah. So it's not good odds to begin with. The fact that we got to watch the whole process from onset of symptoms to death and that process of the sow and the cub coming back and staying with it, I think that's the part that is uncommon about it. Is there any one thing that is going to stick in your mind that you've learned about this, about bears, about the family unit from this? Is there?
I think the most interesting thing that's going to come out of it for me is going to be seeing what the results are from all of the tests that are being run
Yes,
now.
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think all of us were, we've got to get that cub. If it's at
Yeah.
all possible to do it safely, we need this because we just don't know that much about a bear's life and death. The only bear that I know of in this park that we've witnessed die, other than from trauma, bear on bear violence, was one toe back in 2006, 7, 8, somewhere around there. I can't remember. People with the bear ID book could probably look it up. But that's the only one I know, and we were unable to retrieve that body. And of course, that was a large male, so it would have been very difficult for the two of you to pick it up and carry it away. Let's see. This is, I believe, the first time since I've been here that we sent a bear off for testing. That was one of the questions. We have perhaps sent DNA off in the past, and we did a necropsy on the cub that we found up at Lake Brooks, but we did that internally. And the difference in the goal of moving us along a little faster, the difference there quickly, I believe, was that it was very obvious that bear died from trauma, so we wanted to see what was broken. This one, since there was not anything obvious, that's why we sent it away, correct?
Yeah.
So that covers most of the questions we had about just in general the event. I think I've got them all. What's the most difficult part of your job? I didn't ask that one, Bob.
My job?
Yeah.
I don't think it was super difficult. I don't know. Just, I guess just watching the sow and being prepared to let Michael and Leslie know if she started to approach and ready to take action.
When it was happening, I was in Anchorage and I was watching, had seen the sow and the cub get up and move away just before you guys arrived. And I wanted so badly to say, she's over there, you're good, because you guys looked very tentative as you were coming up. You want to describe what you guys were thinking? Somebody? I don't know.
Well, I'd say we had no idea what to expect. We knew where the cub was. We could see her. So each step was a little bit closer. How much is this sow really going to allow? And she was very tolerant.
I'm going to switch to a view right now that shows the view that you guys would have seen as you were coming up. And you guys on camera can see this, but you won't be able to see us pointing at anything. But you can see the magpie sitting next to the cub, and you can see the viewing platform, and you can see the cam. At this time this was happening, the sow and the cub were just slightly upstream from the bridge landing, and so there was no way you guys could see as you were coming up. And so for the people that were watching, they were seeing you guys with your hands on what they thought were revolvers. What did
They
you
were
have
not
on
revolvers.
you?
They were bear. It was bear spray.
Bear spray, right? Do you want to talk about, one of you, why you didn't have shotguns and the cavalry with you?
Sure. So yeah, we did not carry any weapons on that. The philosophy was, we talked about it ahead of time. We were not going to put ourselves in a situation where we were going to have to shoot the sow in order to retrieve the cub. So when we were approaching, we were from the boat. We were looking with binoculars to see if we could see where the sow was. Unfortunately, with the bridge pieces where they blocked her, so we couldn't actually see her. Which is why we had our hands on our bear spray as we were approaching. Which is why we have 3 of us out there. And so as we're approaching, we're looking for her. We stopped as soon as we saw her, evaluated her behavior, decided that she didn't seem terribly stressed out by our presence there. So we continued to approach while Bob kept an eye on her.
Yeah, I was trying to, when it was going on, I was telling people that it was Michael and Leslie that were the ones out at the cub, and that Bob was the one standing watch out by the bridge sections. And people were able to see that very clearly in the video. We couldn't hear anything that you were saying, and which probably makes you guys happy. We could hear birds squawking and the river flowing and stuff like that, but we couldn't hear. We could see you guys were talking as you got closer and probably talking to one another. You know, Bob, do you see anything? Yeah, what's she doing? You know, she's sitting there looking at the water, that sort of thing. So you guys moved in pretty quickly. What were you looking for as you moved in?
What were we looking for?
With the cub when you got up to the.
So anytime you're approaching a dead animal for possible necropsy, it's you want to evaluate the situation around the animal, because it's not just the animal's body that matters for a necropsy. It's also the surrounding scene, whether there's anything obvious. So as we're walking up, we're of course, looking out for other bears, because it's not only Mom that is of potential concern, it's all of the other bears in the area as well. So we're looking out for other bears. We're looking for any evidence of something really obvious that might alert us to what the cause was. You're looking for any defecations or vomiting or anything like that in the area that might give you a clue as to what's causing something like this.
Any deja vu for you? I mean,
Well, at least I knew
it's at
this-
least the second time
Yes,
for you.
at least I knew this was coming. I didn't have to surprise stumble upon a carcass, and it was intact, whereas previous carcass was already picked and scavenged,
Yeah,
so it was
disarray.
a little bit more shocking.
One of the questions was were you afraid? And afraid maybe is a loaded word. You already said you were cautious. You were really looking out for the bear. But evidently you were potentially afraid of something because you all had gloves on. What were the gloves for?
To try and avoid picking up any diseases if it does have diseases.
Yeah, it's just standard practice for us when we handle dead animals. Even if it's barely dead, you want to have the gloves on whenever possible. That doesn't mean that every time you see us pick up like a bird wing or something like that on a program, we're always going to have it, but we really should, because there are diseases that can cross that boundary from animal into human. I mean, we're all animals, so that's why the gloves were on, and I assumed at some point you might remove some feces, or that was a potential, scoop up some vomit or something, and you definitely want to have gloves on if you're going to do that, because think about where you are. You're at Brooks Camp. You don't have running water and Purell everywhere, and so they were going to have to come back dirty if they got all gunked up.
We did have Purell.
Oh, you did have some
Yeah.
big jug of Purell.
No, a small thing of Purell, but
Okay.
thankfully Leslie thought of it, so that was on hand.
I don't know how much the cams helped you at that point, except that you knew the position of the cubs, but that was a question. Now, had somebody been here able to feed you information, that might have been helpful. But I didn't have a park radio that would reach from Anchorage to Homewood Suites to where you were. So the purpose of doing this was to get to the cubs so we could do a necropsy on it. Do you want to tell us about the process? As I said, we don't do them here. Nobody in King Salmon does them.
Yeah.
So what did you have to go through to find a lab, and who's going to do it? Tell us about that.
So the necropsy is being done at the National Wildlife Health Center, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a DOI-run lab. It's run by USGS personnel, I believe. The reason that we decided to go with them is I have been in contact with some scientists with the USGS in Anchorage, who I contacted once we realized we were going to have a dead animal. So we talked to USGS personnel in Anchorage. We talked to Alaska Department of Fish and Game representatives. We just tried to contact anyone we could who might have an interest in collecting samples from this, so we can try and gain as much knowledge from this incident as we can. And in the process, the first lab that was recommended and responded to us was the National Wildlife Health Center. A phenomenal track record. We have dealt with them before with birds. They do a lot of large-scale bird disease outbreaks. So we have sent birds to them in the past as well. They were interested in doing the necropsy, and so we initiated the process and started getting ready to send it there.
And the first part of that process was, of course, to get out and retrieve the cub. You did it pretty quickly. You didn't spend a lot of time there, and there were questions about, I believe they were mostly while it was happening or shortly afterward, about why you didn't bag it right there.
So we chose not to bag that bear before we put it on the boat at all, because one of the most important things, one of the most critical things when you're trying to get an animal off for necropsy is to chill the tissue as quickly as you possibly can. That's where you're going to get the most damage, is very shortly after death, when the tissue is still warm. So we wanted to try and chill it quickly, and so we just left it on the deck of the boat so we get some airflow over it to try and cool off the tissue.
Okay. I hadn't really thought about that. I know that we needed to get it chilled before its long journey to Wisconsin, but what I was thinking is I wouldn't want to be in the process of bagging the cub. I'd want to get it on the boat and away before Mom decided to come back. But that makes a lot more sense. People had asked me about, was I going to have a chance to take a look at it when I got back into town, and would we be able to do a chat? And I said immediately to them, no, because it's got to be chilled. It's got a long way to go. And so you brought it back right away then, right? And immediately bagged it and packed it. And
Yeah.
Yeah, we brought it back, put a tag on the front left foot, packaged it up, packed it with ice, and took it to the airport.
you did that pretty fast, huh?
Yeah.
And is there anything in particular that maybe we wish we had
That's-
done in retrospect?
Let's just put it out there. Everyone wants to know the gender. We don't know the gender. That was not a high priority at that moment in time. We did check for trauma while we were out there, but whether it's male or female, as far as what we could check, as far as what would determine cause of death, right then, gender was not one of them. We didn't even bother to look.
Don't worry, no one has questioned your biological abilities and the birds and the bees. But everybody wanted to know what its gender was. I assume they will tell us
Yes.
at the facility, because they're going to do a full examination.
Once I found out this was such an important issue, I immediately emailed them, and as soon as they get it, they will check it. And after they run the necropsy, they'll immediately write us an email and let us know what gender it is.
Okay. And we'll share that with you, we promise. What I'm going to do here, a couple of things real quick. We're a little past the halfway point, so you guys are almost off the hook. A little past the halfway point right now. I just want to take a break and welcome anybody that's just joining us now. My name is Roy Wood, and I'm the Chief of Interpretation at Katmai National Park and Preserve. Across the table from me, we have
Michael Saxton, one of the biological techs.
Bob Peterson, biological tech.
And Leslie Scora, also biological tech or bear monitoring, whichever you
And
choose.
we're trying to answer your questions. I believe we've gotten through almost half of them in one way or another, and I apologize if we didn't answer exactly what you asked, but in the lumping together we may have overgeneralized a couple of times. But we may actually get through these and be able to answer some questions that are just coming in from the folks. If you would like to ask a question that hasn't been asked already, you can go to Explore.org's webpage and go all the way to the bottom beneath all the icons where they have all the other cams listed, and you'll see a chat section. You can post your question there, and Rick at Explore will write those down and send them to me on Skype here on my computer, and then we'll try to answer those. But while those start to come in, we will go ahead and jump in with the rest of the discussion. Now, for the next little bit, what I want to do is I want to be able to put some photos of the cub on the screen and show those to you. There is nothing gory, but they are pictures of the dead cub, and some of you may not be interested in seeing that. So perhaps if you don't want to see it, you can look away, close your eyes, do something like that, and we will just talk about what we're seeing. But I think some people might enjoy seeing the cub from a different angle and see it a little more clearly than what they were able to see on the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to them. I'm going to start with the scene as we were walking up. And when you came up, you guys saw the scavengers that were on it. What did you think you might have? Did you think it was still going to be in good shape, or what was your first impression as you were walking up? Any of you?
It was a bit of a concern that there were some scavengers on it. We were interested in it still being as intact as possible and having the eyes there in particular. That's usually what a lot of the ravens and magpies will go for first. And so we were concerned and wanted to sort of get there as quickly as possible for that.
I know watching it, that she had gotten up and moved off of the cub's carcass just a few moments before you guys arrived. So the birds were there just barely before you, and I think you could hear the world going, no! For various reasons. There are some people that view the scavengers, I think, as disrespectful of the remains of the animal. I'm sure there were scientists out there thinking, no, it's going for the eyes or it's going to degrade the samples. And then there were interpreters out there thinking, no, we didn't want it damaged too much, because I think this will be a nice story that we can share with people if we have an intact hide, and we can use it for interpretation and education. The next picture is a close-up shot of it, and this one shows the only damage that I could see based on the photos was the hair that was plucked out of it, and I could see the birds doing that as they were ripping the hair out. Were they pulling really hard, or is the fact that the hair came out in clumps like that, is that an indication of anything?
So usually post-mortem it's a little bit easier to pull hair out. I didn't try to remove any hair, so I don't know how well attached it was at this point. Yeah.
But you would chase the scavengers off, so now you're seeing sort of the whole scene, and looking at the photo, to me, it looks clean. I don't see any signs. Did you see any signs of vomiting or diarrhea or blood or anything?
There was some foam on the underside of the mouth, which may have been associated with vomit, but it appeared that the cub was seizing at one point, so it could have been a result of the seizures. There was fecal matter, but it was laying there for 3 days before it passed away. It wasn't anything.
And it's pretty
unexpected.
typical for when an animal dies to lose the muscle control and to have a little bit of defecation.
Yeah.
You guys had I'm going to say poked and prodded, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but you guys laid your hands on it. You were looking for
any really obvious overt signs of trauma. We're looking for any broken bones. I was checking the fat content around its ribs and stuff to make sure that it seemed like it was in decent shape there. Looking for any parasites in the ears, checking the pads of the feet to see how they looked. Check the teeth to see if there's any real problems there.
picture of that.
So
Those
you're
are some
just,
white teeth.
yeah, you're just looking for any obvious signs of trauma, and we did not find anything.
You and I talked about the fat content, or and the muscle tone and all of that, and you said that seemed to be pretty good.
Yeah, it did seem to be okay. My experience with cubs is somewhat limited with this age cub. I've worked with cubs quite a bit with black bears and with younger grizzlies, but this age I don't know exactly what to expect, but the ribs didn't protrude significantly. Hip joints seemed to be just fine, so the spine wasn't really obvious, so it seemed like it was in okay shape.
Okay. I can't tell in the photo, but is that some of the foamy stuff like off its chin, or?
I don't think so. It was mostly just in contact with
Okay.
its face. It didn't seem to, it might be just a little bit, but it
Okay.
wasn't, a whole lot that would have caused concern for some other sort of process.
So you said there were no internal injuries.
Well,
There were sorry, external injuries.
Yeah,
Wrong
okay.
word. Big difference. You said there were no obvious external injuries. There could be internal injuries.
and just because I didn't see the external injury doesn't mean it wasn't there. It is certainly, if there's any holes in the hide or anything like that, it's a lot easier to spot them once you've removed the skin.
But yeah, nothing obvious in the limited time you had to examine it in the field with a mother bear not too far away who has very strong maternal instincts. So I have another shot to show, which I wanted to put in here because it shows pretty well the size of the bear. And you're how tall?
6'3".
6'3". So that's the cub in relation to the legs and forearms of a 6'3" tall man. It was pretty good size. When you guys picked it up, I won't say that you struggled with it, but it gave the appearance of being heavy. How much would you say it weighed?
Probably about 60 pounds.
Right, yeah. And it's always a little awkward to carry something with head and
Right, no handles.
Yeah, exactly. So that was also a factor. But yeah, it was a good size and heavier to carry than I probably would have just expected from a cub just born that year.
Yeah, so that's pretty phenomenal growth. That when it's born, it weighs about a pound.
Less,
And-
8 ounces.
And in 9-10 months, it's gone from that to this, and is healthy, or was healthy. I mean, it's growing, it's sibling at least, putting on good weight, and both mom and the cub look pretty good. There's a question that comes up a lot talking about the bears at Brooks Camp, and that is inbreeding. And I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. If there's this assumption that we've got an island, that we all live on an island, and it's not, Brooks Camp is not an island, but the fact that there's no way in or no way out, maybe it's because we see the same bears year after year that people think that. Have we done any work, or is there the possibility to do any work to determine
There was
how
a
inbred or not?
There was a limited study that was done 2005 through 2008, but there's not really any results from that regarding whether it's an inbred population. We are hoping to start a genetic study next year, and part of the aim of that would be to look at general population characteristics, effective population size, and inbreeding coefficient among them. Currently, we have no evidence to indicate that this population is inbred. There's no strong reason to suspect that it would be inbred, just in terms of it's not a closed population. It does connect with other bears. There is outbreeding that occurs. The one question that could perhaps lead to a hypothesis of inbreeding would be that if bears that won't habituate to people won't be in this area, then it's possible that you remove them from the gene pool and thus select for these animals that are willing to tolerate people.
And your study that you're hoping to begin next summer is going to perhaps lead to a better understanding of that, correct?
Yes.
And that's the one that when you guys were wanting to know what kind of chocolate we wanted and things like that on Saturday, that I was trying to direct you to. If you would like to donate to the park, you're always welcome to do it. You can just send a check to the superintendent of Katmai. We can get the address posted for you again. In fact, somebody's probably doing it in chat right now. But that's the best way to show how committed you are to protecting the bears and the other resources at Katmai, is to make a donation like that. Don't get me wrong, we love chocolate, we love the snacks that everybody sends, but I think you would probably give up a little bit of chocolate to do a DNA study. And I would too. I would love to know some of the family tree better here. I would love to be able to answer with some certainty that idea of the population being inbred. I would also like to know how good are we at actually identifying bears from season to season, which I'm sure you would like to, since that's your job, right? And you'd be able to tell us some of that too.
All of those are goals that have been listed as a part of that project.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to do it, but we can do more if we have more money to run samples and you talked about the cost of doing a DNA study, like the range of.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and a lot of them we don't have figured out necessarily, but I would estimate anywhere from $50 to $100 per sample.
That's that. If you do feel compelled to donate, and please don't feel like you have to, but if you do feel compelled to donate, that's a great way to do it. You can further the understanding of these bears and be able to take pride in the fact that you helped, really helped us understand the bears at Brooks Camp at least a lot better. I did forget to ask a couple of questions about the necropsy. How long is it going to take?
So the necropsy, so far as I'm aware, should actually be occurring today, but that's just gross necropsy. So we will hopefully have results from that by the end of the week or early next week. but that is just gross necropsy. It doesn't include all of the lab work. If they get it and they take a look at it and see some large bite marks that we somehow missed in our examination, then it probably won't go too much further than that. But if there's potential for virus or bacteria, different lab tests take different amounts of time. If it's bacteria, it could take months. It takes a while to grow cultures, and they have to grow multiple cycles of cultures, and it's usually about 2 weeks per cycle.
And blood tests would be much faster, right? If you're looking for toxins
Depending on what you're looking for, could be. Yeah, it should be.
because I know a lot of people were concerned about it being antifreeze, and we discussed that, and we won't know till the tests are run, but they would be doing blood tests to look for things
Yes,
like that.
they
correct?
will look for it. I discussed that possibility with the vet that's going to be doing the necropsy, and she sent me some papers on the effects of propylene glycol, which is what is used out at Brooks Camp on dogs, and it seems unlikely, but because it is relatively, you have to consume a lot of it for there to be significant negative consequences.
And I think people would think, oh, well, this poor baby cub. But a 60-pound cub is bigger than most people's dogs.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Assuming the toxicity is the same, this would be a large dog and would have to drink a lot of antifreeze. But
Yeah.
of course, animals vary quite a bit over how they react to different. Like we like chocolate. Chocolate makes dogs very sick.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and some of the other, part of this necropsy, one of the things that's really exciting is that we're also sending samples to researchers at a lot of different institutions, and we're going to get far more in-depth analyses than we would from a standard necropsy. The timeline on that is a little bit more vague because it just depends on the research load of those individuals. But there should be some really fascinating information that comes out of this.
Another question I didn't ask there was, can tapeworms be fatal?
Tapeworms, so far as I'm aware, tapeworms cannot be fatal to bears in Alaska. The reason I say that is that the tapeworm species that exists in salmon is a different tapeworm species than exists in beef, which is a different tapeworm species that exists in pork. The tapeworm species that exists in pork can be fatal in rare cases because the eggs can actually migrate outside of the intestinal tract. You can end up with eggs in your brain, and it can result in some neurological damage and potentially death. The species that is present in salmonids, so far as I'm aware, has never been shown to have the same effect.
Okay. And another disease question that I just didn't figure out how to slip into the conversation, so we'll just ask it. Do bears get distemper or parvovirus or rabies?
Bears can get all three of those. However, the most recent study I'm aware of in Alaska, I believe the data collection was completed in 1991. However, in that study, they did find distemper. I don't think they looked for rabies in that one, but they did not find any incidence of parvovirus. So it is possible. Parvo has been found in brown bears in Europe, but so far as I'm aware, not Alaska. We are working with researchers who are currently conducting tests to see what the disease and parasite load is like in brown bears in Alaska. So that's one of the samples that's being sent off is the sample of blood from this cub will go to that researcher where they'll hopefully be able to tell us more.
Okay. I think that was all for the actual what the diseases were. Somebody did ask just live in the chat right now, what if it is rabies? What would we do? As far as I know, rabies are a naturally occurring disease in North America. I mean, we would not want to have rabid bears around, but I know even in outside of bears, I don't know very much about rabies in bears, but I know in some animals, rabies doesn't lead to the aggressive, violent behavior that you see in foxes and some raccoons and some other animals. Like bats just kind of curl up and die in most cases, and it's not very transmissible, and I don't know if we have enough cases with bears to know what that likelihood of that is. Do you?
I'm not aware of there being, so once again, going back to old research, I'm sure that if I was to talk to, say, the state vet with ADF&G, she could probably give me more up-to-date information. However, I'm not aware of any cases of rabies in brown bears in Alaska. If this did turn out to be rabies, and this was our one case study of a brown bear with rabies, then yeah, I from what I saw, I didn't see. I'm not as concerned then with it becoming really violent and coming and attacking people. But it's only one case study, so it's not really useful.
There were some questions about the sow, her physical condition and her behavior, and some of them we're not going to be able to answer because they're get inside the mind of the brain of the bear, if you will, and tell us what she was thinking. But the limp, how long has she had the limp?
She showed up in fall of 2013 with that limp, and it was much worse at that time. She would put some weight on it, but it definitely less than she has been, but continued to come back, usually in the fall. We wouldn't see her much in July, but would come back and was successful in 2014, and then had the first documented litter that we had seen this year. And she still can kind of carry it, that back right leg a little funny, but is doing quite well otherwise.
Let's see, what there was a question about that I was going to ask. Do you think that because this was her first litter, that maybe she was a little more attached to it, and that's why she stayed with it so long? That I think is one of those questions where, until she answers surveys for us, as Troy would say, we won't know, because we don't know if it is her first even.
That is very true. She could have come in from another area, and that she's one of the ones we're not sure of her exact age. We didn't monitor her growing up or as a sub-adult, so it is unclear, and until she has another litter, or we could monitor more after that, where there's little way of knowing.
You said that she comes in like in the fall. Is she not seen typically in July?
I believe we had seen her July of 2013 without the limp.
Okay.
So within probably during August, when she went elsewhere away from Brooks River, that's probably when she developed the limp somehow or another.
Is she like less tolerant of people than some of the other bears around camp?
She was one that usually frequented the cut bank, which doesn't have the large viewing platforms. She would encounter anglers and seemed okay with them, but just didn't tend to frequent the areas with larger numbers of people. So perhaps had some avoidance, but seemed all right in this fall with her litter of cubs to at least come down to the lower platform. So she didn't have a total aversion to people.
There were several people that asked, like, is she going to have that now? Is she going to be very wary of humans? And many of them, or maybe not many, a few of them were even concerned about, like you guys in particular, that now she smells the three of you or smells humans, and would blame us for the cubs. Has there ever been any indication that bears have held a grudge like that? Other than in movies. Like
yeah, if you watch Grizzly. Then yeah, absolutely.
I know they recognize you. They have to recognize you and the other bear techs around,
I just don't know if there would be too much of a negative association or aversion. I mean, if she comprehended that we were taking the cub away versus just kind of her following the scent of where the cub was. We didn't have like an actual negative experience with her, as we had to haze her away from the cub in any way, shape, or form. So I doubt she would have a specific negative reaction toward us.
As far as bears holding a grudge, it's an interesting idea. I know that topic has been discussed quite a bit when it comes to bear capture in other locations. That is often a concern that is raised. Is by collaring these bears, are we going to cause them to have some sort of a vendetta against people? There is no evidence to support the idea that bears are holding a grudge against people for these reasons. Sometimes people point to the fact that collar bears have been known to kill people before. However, that is usually because the reason they received a collar in the first place is because there were some issues with that bear, whether it's they were becoming food conditioned, which is that has been shown in research to be the primary thing associated with conflicts with people is bears becoming food conditioned. But there's no evidence to suggest that bears are holding grudges against people for capture events or in a situation like this.
I'm sure she could smell you guys in the area, especially after she came back. Bob, since you were watching her or trying to watch her, was she aware of what they were doing? Did she look over that way? Or?
I didn't see her look over that way. She seemed, I mean, I'm sure she knew we were in the area, but she just didn't really seem to care. She just was slowly moving up the river looking for fish.
At that point, I really had thought she had, made her peace with it, or whatever you want to call it. No way we can say what was going on in her mind, but I thought that she was pretty much done with it, because she looked to be intent on fishing. She had been away from it most of the night. It was a little, well, I will use the word surprising. It was a little surprising to see her on there when the sun came up, and not so much that I didn't think that she was capable of going back and visiting again, but I thought, oh no, you guys are going to be on your way out there, and she's going to be camped out on it again. But yeah, I wasn't sure if she ever glanced over and looked in your direction, and so you were watching that. What we saw after you guys packed up and left, and you wandered out on the spit. What were you looking? I'll detour for a second. What were you looking for on the spit? And
anything. So I mentioned earlier that in a necropsy, it's more than just the lab, dissection of the animal. It's any evidence you can find in the field. So we were just wandering the area that, we had seen the videos of the cub walking up the spit. So we were just walking everywhere along the spit to see if we could find anything. I know there were some people that were wondering about the bridge because we had taken some pictures of the bridge. That's just us documenting. There was some damage done. So we try and document all property damage done by bears. So we were just looking around to see if we could find anything obvious.
After you guys pulled away, I don't know if you were aware, but sometime after you pulled away, I know you're aware now, but she went up and went to the spot where you had loaded the cub onto the boat, and that was somewhat distressing to a number of people, that they felt maybe she hadn't let go yet. And that we took the cub too soon, and there were some people that felt like we should have at that point. Maybe they were in favor of collecting the cub before, but when they saw that, said we should have left it. Any thoughts on that process? Like, I don't. The question is, did she have enough time to get over the loss of the cub?
We won't know until she answers the question.
Yeah,
we talked earlier about that gradient of behavior, how some sows are going to respond in one way and other sows respond in different ways. There's no way for us to know A, what she's thinking, or B, where she's going to fall on that spectrum. So for us, it's once the cub died, it became we were hoping to try and collect it as quickly as possible, because we do need to get it chilled so that we can run these tests and learn as much as possible from the animal.
I believe that may be about it as far as the questions. Let me just take a quick look through here and see if there's anything that came through on the chat that we can quickly answer. We are at exactly 1 hour right now. And let's see, we already talked about how much it weighed, about 60 pounds. Should it have weighed more? Seems normal.
Yeah.
One thing I think, I'll go off on a little tangent here, and I believe we've talked about this before, is I think that many people watching the cameras think that all bears need to be as fat as Bead Nose. Whereas if you were to ask a bear in Yellowstone if they're fat enough, bears in Yellowstone and in Glacier and in interior places go into their dens much thinner than Bead Nose and Otis and 747. We have a very different perspective on.
Our bears are very lucky.
Yeah. So to me, it looked like a wonderfully plump and jiggly little cub. So I didn't see anything there. Survival rate for the cubs is very low. What is the cause, illness or other bears? I think we don't know, other than trauma and maybe falls and
Documented cases, I think, trauma, infanticide from mostly large males, but other females as well will certainly commit infanticide.
Is there anything you guys feel like did I miss anything? You guys have the questions there too. One last chance here to get our plugs in. And I don't really see anything that jumps out at me. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. I know that many of you wanted answers that we weren't able to provide today, as far as the exact cause of death, or boy or girl even, but we will share that information with you when we get it. Now there's a possibility that we won't be able to share everything with you at once, because we won't want to withhold it forever. And then hypothetically speaking, let's say that there was something that led us to believe there was foul play. We obviously would not be sharing that with you, because it could compromise an ongoing investigation. Much like when Divot had the snare around her neck, we didn't talk about where we thought she got the snare and what kind of snare it was. That was sort of off limits. But when we get the information, we will share it with you in some fashion. Perhaps you guys could contribute that information to a blog that might write, or maybe we try to do another chat later. But mostly we're going to have to wait to answer a lot of the questions until we get those results. I mean, if we started to speculate right now, we're going to mess up, and none of us wants to be wrong publicly like this. So we'll wait till the experts tell us what the issues were, and hopefully you can wait with us. Right now, I think the one thing you guys can do that would help us out a lot is keep looking for 451 and see if she comes back again, and if she has the cub, and we've got the limp and the pausing with that right foot like on its tippy toes, which makes her easy to pick out, and you guys are very good at picking her out on the camera. So definitely, if you see her on the cameras, let us know, and record those videos and make those observations, and we'll I guess go ahead and sign off until next time. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Roy, Chief of Interpretation at Katmai.
Michael, biological tech.
Bob, biotech.
Leslie, bear monitor.
More people than we've ever had on a chat at once, I think. If you missed any of this, or if if you're just joining us right now, maybe by the end of the week, Explorer will probably have it edited down a little bit, and we'll be placing it on their YouTube channel. So check there, check in the chat area, and people will post it once it goes live. Until our next chat, thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.